Hello viewers, I am Professor Sharanjeet, working at the Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, Punjab. In today's lecture, we shall talk about formation of a contract offer. Human beings are social animals and are interdependent not only for their mere existence but also for social, political, economic and commercial development and progress. For achieving these objectives, persons both natural and juristic enter into agreements and contracts in their day-to-day work. The first step for the creation of an agreement is making of an offer. An agreement is dependent upon an offer being made by one party and acceptance of the same by the other party to whom it is made. If the offer is not accepted, no valid contract can be formulated. Hence, in today's lecture, we shall discuss what an offer is. All contracts are agreements, but not all agreements are contracts. Hence, for the purpose of entering into a valid contract, the offer and how it is to be made are dependent upon the legal framework as given in the Indian Contract Act of 1872. As per the Indian Contract Act, an offer is also called a proposal. In simple words, Raghav wants to sell his flat located in New Delhi for a sum of rupees 1 crore. He has to make an offer in this regard. If he is desirous to sell the flat but never ever makes any offer to any person, then his desire would not result in any actual sale of the flat. Raghav may offer to sell it by approaching buyers through different modes. The offer can be made for a limited period of time or it may remain open till it is accepted. As per the Indian Contract Act of 1872, Section 2A defines a proposal. When one person signifies to another his willingness to do or to abstain from doing anything with a view to obtaining the assent of that other person to such act or abstinence, he is said to make a proposal. As per Section 2B of the Indian Contract Act, when the person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. A proposal, when accepted, becomes a promise. Furthermore, as per Section 2C of the Contract Act, the person making the proposal is called the promiser and the person accepting the proposal is called the promisee. In simple language, the person who makes the offer is called the offerer and the person to whom the offer is made is called the offeree. As per the law, both the offerer and the offeree must be competent to contract. The offer should be a lawful one and should not be to commit a crime or a tort. The offerer as well as the offeree can be both natural persons and juristic persons. The offer may be accepted while it is alive. For example, if Sunil wants to sell his phone to Shyam and makes an offer for a period of 1 month, if the offer is not accepted by Shyam within 1 month, it will automatically come to an end after 1 month. Another important aspect with reference to an offer is that the offer needs to be accepted as it is made. The offeree must not impose any conditions while accepting the offer. If the offeree imposes certain conditions before accepting the offer, the original offer will come to an end and a counter offer by the offeree shall take place of the original offer. For instance, Sunil made an offer to Shyam for the sale of a mobile phone for a sum of rupees 25,000. Shyam agrees to buy the phone but imposes the condition of buying it at rupees 18,000. This will result in the termination of the offer made by Sunil to Shyam, and now a new offer, which is known as a counter offer by Shyam for buying the phone at rupees 18,000 shall be there. Dear viewers, it is important to note that in the commercial world, it is not just a natural person who is capable of making an offer. A juristic person like a company, corporation, association or university can also, in its legal capacity, make offers to a specific group of people or to the public at large. Now we shall discuss the essentials of a valid offer. An offer for the purpose of formulating a contract which is valid and enforceable in the eyes of the law has to fulfill certain essentials. The first essential is that there should be an intention to create a legal relationship. Here, legal relationship signifies that on acceptance of the offer by the offeree, if either of the parties makes any breach of the agreement, the other party can file a case against him or her in the court of law. In the previous lectures, we have already discussed that all the offers which are made by a person may not be made with the intention of creating a legal relationship between the parties. The offer can be with reference to social, family, personal and cultural agreements and arrangements. Hence, an offer made by one person to another to go for a movie or for a picnic or for watching a play in a theatre is not made with any intention to create a legal relationship between the parties. Sometimes the offer itself states that it is a social agreement and there is no intention to create any legal relationship between the parties. Here I would like to refer to the case of Rose and Frank Company versus Crompton Brothers Limited, 1925. In this case, the agreement between the parties provided that the agreement is not entered into as a formal or legal agreement and shall not be subject to legal jurisdiction in the law courts, and that it will be carried through by the parties with mutual loyalty and friendly cooperation. In this particular case, one of the parties breached this agreement and the other party, in action against them, enforced this agreement in a court of law. It was held by the court that since the agreement had provided that it was not a formal or legal agreement, the same was not enforceable. Another interesting case in this regard is that of Johns versus Pedawaton, 1969. There was an agreement between a mother and a daughter. Mrs. Johns lived in Trinidad and her daughter, who was a divorcee with a young child, lived in Washington and was working in the embassy at Washington. Mrs. Johns tried to convince her daughter to leave her job and study for the bar in England to become a barrister, and she also offered to pay her daughter a monthly allowance during the studies for the period in England. Her daughter agreed to the suggestion and consequently left the job and came to England. In 1964, Mrs. Johns bought a house in England and her daughter was allowed to stay in a part of the house and the remaining part was let out. The money received from the rent was given to the daughter to cover her expenses. However, in 1967, there were some differences between the two and Mrs. Johnson brought an action against her daughter to evict her from the said property, but her daughter had not completed her studies for the bar. Her daughter contended that in view of the promise made by her mother, she was legally bound to maintain her until she completed her studies at the bar in England. It was held that when the mother made an offer to her daughter, there was no intention to create a legal relationship between the two of them, as the agreement was not reduced to writing and the duration for which the daughter was entitled to be maintained by her mother was nowhere specified. Hence, the mother's action for evicting her daughter from the property succeeded. Another important case in this regard is Merritt versus Merritt, 1970. In this case, the husband and wife were the joint owners of a building. However, the building was subject to a mortgage. The husband left his wife and started living with another woman. The husband and the wife entered into an agreement, and the husband signed a note saying that the wife will pay all the outstanding amount in respect of the mortgage, and in return she will get sole ownership of the said property. This case is different from the previously discussed case because here the parties intended to create a legal relationship, and therefore both husband and wife were bound by a legal and enforceable contract. The second essential of a valid offer is with regard to its terms and conditions. The terms of the offer must be specific and certain. It is very essential that the offer must not only be made with an intention to create a legal relationship, but its terms, conditions and requirements for acceptance must also be very clear, specific and unambiguous. For example, if Ramesh makes an offer to sell a plot to his uncle without mentioning the size of the plot, its location and cost, then this offer is ambiguous and uncertain and cannot result in a valid agreement. Dear viewers, the third essential of an offer lies in its communication. Communication means making the offer known to the parties for whom it has been made. Until and unless the offeree comes to know about the offer, there is nothing that he can accept. Thus, the offer must be communicated. According to Section 2A of the Contract Act, it clearly states that when one person signifies to another his willingness to do or to abstain from doing something, he is said to make an offer. Hence, signifying the offer is very important. Signifying the offer means communicating the offer or making the offer known to the other party for whom the offer is made. The offer can be communicated to a specific person or to the general public. If the offer is not communicated formally, there shall be no acceptance and hence no contract between the parties. Section 4 of the Indian Contract Act states, the communication of a proposal is complete when it comes to the knowledge of the person to whom it is made. From Section 4, we can very well understand that if the communication of a proposal is not made properly and it never comes to the knowledge of the offeree, there can never be an agreement. For instance, Ronnie writes a letter to John to sell his watch for rupees 10,000. After writing the letter in which the offer is made, Ronnie puts the letter in an envelope and keeps it in his drawer. He never posted the letter. Hence, the communication of the offer remains incomplete and John did not come to know about the same. Thus, merely having an intention to make an offer is not sufficient for the purpose of the law. The offer has to be communicated to the offeree. Only when the offer is communicated does the offeree come to know about the same and can decide whether to accept it or to reject it. This can be explained with the help of certain important cases. Lalman Shukla versus Gauri Dutt is an important case in this regard. The brief facts of this case are that the defendant's nephew absconded from home. The plaintiff, who was the defendant's servant, was sent to search for the missing boy. After the servant had left the house to search for the boy, the defendant issued handbills announcing a reward of Rs 501 for anyone who was able to find the missing boy. The plaintiff, the servant of the defendant, was ignorant of this offer when he left the house to search for the missing boy, as the same was made when he had already been commanded to search for the missing boy. However, when he came to know of the award, which was announced in his absence, he claimed the award when he returned back with the missing boy. The question arose whether the defendant was bound to pay him Rs 501 as the award money to his servant. It was held that the plaintiff was not aware of the offer or award when he left the house in search of the missing boy. At that point in time, the servant was merely obeying the commands of his master. As the offer was never communicated to the defendant, he was not entitled to claim any reward for the same. Another important case is Williams versus Carradine. In this case, the plaintiff knew that a reward had been announced to be given to anyone who furnished information regarding an assailant for murder. The plaintiff, after coming to know of the offer, gave the necessary information leading to the conviction of the assailant. While giving the information, the plaintiff said that she wanted to give the information to ease her conscience and did not intend to claim any reward for the same. But at a later point in time, she brought an action to claim the reward money. It was held that since the offer was accepted by the women with full knowledge of the award, there was a valid contract between them, and therefore she was entitled to claim the reward money. In this case, the offer was communicated and it was accepted, which led to an agreement between the parties. In this regard, it is also essential to throw light on Section 3 of the Indian Contract Act, which deals with communication, acceptance and revocation of proposals. It states that the communication of proposals, the acceptance of proposals and the revocation of proposals and acceptance respectively are deemed to be made by any act or omission of the party proposing, accepting or revoking, by which he intends to communicate such proposal, acceptance or revocation, or which has the effect of communicating it. Section 9 of the Indian Contract Act is also relevant. Section 9 states that in so far as the proposal or acceptance of any promise is made in words, the promise is said to be express. In so far as such a proposal or acceptance is made otherwise than in words, the promise is said to be implied. From the above, we can infer that an offer may be communicated by the offerer by any act or omission by which the offerer intends to communicate such an offer, or which has the effect of communicating the offer. Therefore, the offer can be either an express offer or an implied offer. When the offer is made by words written or spoken, it is an express offer, whereas when the offer is to be implied from the circumstances, then it can be an implied offer. Dear viewers, as per the law, there is a difference between an offer and a letter of intent. In simple terms, a letter of intent precludes a contract. It is only a charter containing the terms subject to which a contract can be governed in future. It merely reflects a party's intention to enter into a contract with the other party in the near future. In the case of Chaturbhuj Vitthal Das Jaswani versus Mureshwar Parshuram, the Supreme Court of India made the following observation. The letter of intent merely sets out the terms on which the parties are ready to do business with each other if and when orders were placed and executed. As soon as an order was placed and accepted, a contract arose. It is true that this contract would be covered by the terms set out in the letter of intent, but until an order was placed and accepted, there can be no contract. Dear viewers, let's come to the conclusion. The first stage for making a valid agreement lies in making a valid offer. An offer forms the basis of an agreement. An offer merely refers to a promise to do or to abstain from doing something. The offer should be clear, specific and certain. The offer can be for a limited period of time or it can be for an unlimited time till it is accepted. Similarly, the offer can be made to a specific individual or it can be made to the public at large. But in all the circumstances, it is highly crucial that the offer must be made with an intention to create a legal relationship. From a legal relationship, we can infer that it should not be a social arrangement or a family agreement. The offer must be made with an intention to enforce the agreement, taking birth from it in a court of law if one party makes a breach of the terms and conditions. Similarly, the offer, even though made with an intent to create a legal relationship, has to be communicated. Communicating an offer simply means making the offer known to the person to whom it has been made. In contemporary times, the communication of the offer can be made through different channels. The offer must be communicated to the specific person or to the general public. If the offer is not communicated, there can never be a valid agreement between the parties. There is also a difference between an offer and an invitation to offer. In the end, I would like to conclude by saying that a contract is dependent upon an offer to a great extent, as an offer forms the basis of the mutual promises between the parties. With this, we come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you very much.